Jody McDonald and John McMullen. You are listening to Mac and Mac here on Birds 365. For the next 15, 20 minutes, you're going to listen to Rob Kuestner from NBC 10 Sports. Rob, you look like a guy who's been through the wars before.
Thanks, Jody.
Oh,
I don't quite know how to take that. Sure.
Hey, you look better than us, Rob.
You're talking to two other guys who have been through the wars, so we're
true.
bonding together over that. Do you remember it ever being this bad with a team with this level of expectations? Because right now the Philadelphia Eagles are the most underachieving team in the National Football League. You ever remember it being this bad in Philly before?
Nah, I don't. I mean, 94 Kotite is the only comparison where you get off to a start like that, but you weren't coming off a Super Bowl. You didn't have the resume and the chops this team had, winning 2 playoff games the way they won them last year, putting up a fight the way they did against Kansas City, and then obviously a 10-1 start. No, I don't even see how there is any comparison in Eagle history.
No.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly it's happened too, Rob. We had talked, all of us had talked, and you get to be in the locker room all the time as well, how strong the locker room was, how many great leaders they have on this particular team. And by the way, I still think that's true, but all of a sudden you see some cracks there.
Yeah.
Most notably A.J. Brown. We're all trying to figure out what's going on there. He did say it's not about us, the reporters. He's had some issues in the past with social media and maybe needing to stay away from that. Other people have said it's the coaching. He's upset with the coaching. What do you think is going on in that locker room, Rob?
Well, as it relates to AJ, I would lean the direction that you just finished with. And you guys were talking about it in the first segment, how Nick sort of backtracked and wished he had done it a little differently, or at least considered that he had done it a little differently. And part of that is get AJ Brown the ball in that spot. I mean, think about what got you into that spot in the field from the get-go. It was AJ Brown for 18 yards. I mean, and we're trying to look at a line of demarcation and where sort of everything kind of fell apart. Well, before the bye, AJ Brown was an MVP candidate. He wasn't just the best player on this team. He was one of the top 5 players in the league by statistical measure, by dominance on the field. I mean, geez, we could look back at the first half of games. Think about down in Washington. They're down 14-3 and look completely disinterested. And AJ Brown says, I'm the best player on the field, and it's over. And he's making one-handed catches, and he's down the sideline for another catch. He was phenomenal in that game. In fact, both Washington games. How you don't feed the best player on the team in that spot when you're leaking oil and your defense can't get a stop, especially when you have the first down, you're the 1st and 20 now, and you maybe the best play of the season was the 3rd and 20 conversion against the Giants. I mean, John,
before, by the way. Yeah.
Right. And so you're in a spot. How about you just throw it to 11 and let him go do something,
Yeah.
And he had reached
that's interesting, Rob, because the dichotomy of that, you're coming off a game where you get a 3rd and 20, right, against the Giants. Here you're set back, but you had, I believe that was the first down. So you had
it was 1st and 20.
Yes.
Yeah, Mailata takes the penalty, and
then you get
20.
quarterback sweep, bubble screen. There's not one shot play. There's not one attempt to convert it. Yeah. And you proved you could convert it the week before.
The first one is a design play, which stuns me. But the second one is an RPO, and I think that's a misread. Again, I don't like the call either, but I do think that's a little bit of a misread. I think Jalen's got to hand the ball off there. Yeah. But either way, it's still 2nd and 20. And if it goes for what it looks like when I've rewatched the play, maybe it goes for 7 yards instead of -4. You know what I mean? To not get AJ the ball there, I think he has a right to be frustrated.
All right, couple things on that. And John and I started this conversation. I want to include you in it on too, Rob. First thing's on AJ Brown. He's number 5 in the National Football League in targets, okay? So 5. There's 4 players in the NFL who have the ball thrown to him more than AJ Brown. So if AJ Brown is going to lose his mind because he's not getting the ball enough, you get it the 4th most, 5th most in the NFL, AJ. It's not like they've forgotten about you. You get the ball plenty. One play is going to make you lose your mind. Shame on A.J. Brown. Number 2, on that final series before they kicked the field goal to give them the lead, and then, of course, Cardinals march it down and score. Here was something that really got me thinking last week when Brian Johnson was talking to you guys about the whole run the football thing, run the ball, the chant in the stadium. And he came out and said, you guys realize that most of our plays are decisions within the play as to whether we're going to run the ball or throw the ball. That every single play has options off it as to what's going to actually transpire, which basically comes out and says it's the quarterback's choice. That
Sure.
RPOs, and if he goes to the line and sees something, he can adjust and change the play. He basically put it all on Jalen Hurts. He's the guy who's deciding run-pass ratio and what particular play they're going to run. As you just said, Rob, that second down after he gets the short run on first, that's his call. The 4-yard loss on second down, which puts him in 3rd and 20, that's on him. And I'll say this right here, right now. I guarantee you, as sure as my name is Joseph Anthony Aloysius McDonald Jr., the number 1 read on the bubble screen to Kenny Gainwell was not the bubble screen to Kenny Gainwell. That was not the number 1 read. Jalen had just gotten smacked around twice, and he said, I'm getting the ball the hell out of my hands as soon as possible. We're going to kick a field goal. That was on the QB. I can guarantee you that was not the number 1 read. But he wasn't going to do anything other than get rid of the ball as soon as he possibly could. Are we not scrutinized the quarterback enough with when it comes up short from time to time? And I get it. The offense isn't near as big a problem as the defense, but they put a lot on Jalen's plate this year. Is he just not eating?
Yeah, listen, he hasn't played as well as last year, but I do think that's and John pointed this out earlier, partially a result of what they're seeing from defenses. I mean, if you go back even to their very first series of the game when they go 3 and out, Jonathan Gannon knew flat out they were going to go in that spot to run that slant route because that is what the Eagles do when they have to have just 7 yards. Look, forget everything else. Get the ball out, get the quarterback in rhythm. Let's get 7 yards. He knew it was coming. He doubled 2 guys down to the spot who got to where AJ were before he even got to the spot. And the Eagles had to punt. And he just felt like, okay, I've gotten in their head a little bit. I've made them have to think about things. They're going to have to adjust what they like to do. So back to the situation you're referring to. Sure, I think that there's something to be said for that. And I do think defenses are doing things a little differently to confuse Jalen. And that's just part of the learning curve that comes with a quarterback that has the level of success he had last year. Teams are going to adapt and figure things out, and he has to do that a little better. But again, I think you'd agree, if you're putting it on a scale, Jalen and decision-making is not really the reason they lost, blew a 21-6 lead to the Arizona Cardinals at home.
Right. It's more about the defense. But if we're looking just at the offense.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I want to get back to AJ, though.
We talked about it a little yesterday. And, this brings AJ into the conversation.
Yeah.
Shouldn't the Eagles, with the talent that they have, quarterback, wide receivers, offensive line, one of the best, shouldn't they be able to dictate terms? Shouldn't they be able to say, here's what we're going to run? Because I'm hearing a lot from Sirianni and from Ertz that, we're reacting to the defense and we're calling plays and trying to execute plays in reference to what the defense is and how we can best. Can't you just say, here's what we're going to do, and you adjust defense? That they're allowing Jonathan Gannon and his band of merry misfits to dictate to them as to what plays they should be running. Shouldn't they be able to dictate to the Cardinals what they want to run?
They should. And I know you guys referenced Seth earlier. I agree with him. I mean, he said multiple times you have to earn the right to throw the ball the way they attempt to. The chunk plays that they try to get are earned because you can run the ball for 7 yards, 8 yards, right down your throat. Think about when they hit the only spot in Nick Sirianni's tenure that matches this one. They start 2-5. Everybody remembers the flower and makes the jokes and everything else. But the reality is they ran the ball 50 times against Detroit the next week, right? They ran the ball consistently and pretty much on average for about 47 times for well over 200 yards a game in a 4-game stretch. They could have told you. I mean, you talk about the Michigan game, it could have been sign stealing. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Here it comes. Stop it, because you're not going to.
That's
And
what the
I
old
wonder where
Cowboys
that
did.
is.
The
Yep.
Jimmy Johnson Cowboys.
Yes,
They
sir.
just,
Yeah, and
they,
I just
they
wonder
just-
where that is. I would like to see that more often. I'd like to see more of the power run game. I know Brian Baldinger talks about it. Certainly, Seth talks about it. I agree with him. I'd like you to just say, I've got Jordan Mailata, I've got Landon Dickerson, and I've got one of the most smart and athletic centers of all time in Jason Kelsey. I'm just going to say I'm running behind those guys. You're going to have to move some people that way. And then, oh, by the way, I've got a developing Juergens and the best of the entire bunch and Lane Johnson on the other side. And just say I'm doing that, bring people up, and then give Jalen a little less to do. Look, if we're looking for a reason for why the collapse has been so significant, one of them in my mind is just the amount of stuff being put on Jalen's plate. And I understand why you do it. I understand how you can fall in love with him. But think about the last win of significance before this drop-off. That's Buffalo. I mean, he's making plays to Olamide Zaccheaus that just, if you run them 100 times, they don't work 99.
Yeah.
And instead, he's rolling left, keep a play alive, boom, throw the ball to a spot. And that's a touchdown that steals a win against a really good football team, and they get the ball in overtime, and he pretty much carries them outside of one DeAndre run down for the touchdown. It's all Jalen. I think you got to take a little bit off of his plate to get the offense a little more in balance and a little more in rhythm. But I want to go back, if I can, to AJ real quick, because I think that's interesting. So are his targets that high? Yes. Are they that high since Kansas City and the bye? I'm not sure they would be top 5 in the NFL. And if I'm in the fourth quarter of a game I have to have and the offense is sputtering a little bit and I just converted on first down and got 18 yards and I'm AJ Brown, I do want the ball because I'm like, I can take us home. We need us to take us home. And John, you were in the locker room, I think, in one of the most revealing interviews of the year. And it's the last time AJ spoke to us, which was in the locker room.
I asked him that question. I think I might have ruined the year for everyone. No, he had a very good answer, very involved.
He's emotional. And he takes this
really
stuff to heart. I mean, listen, I was with him the day after they lost to Seattle. And I said, how much sleep did you get? He goes, listen, man, I slept about 20 minutes on the plane. I have been stewing ever since. I was bawling my eyes out when we get off that plane. I cannot believe we put so much into this to not come up with a against Seattle up the way we were. It hurts.
Yeah.
So, I think
with AJ,
really has his heart in the right place. I do think he lets his emotions out because he's a younger guy.
Yeah. I think with AJ too, it's not about targets. It's about spots.
Right.
He wants the ball in big spots. He wants to go, or he wants the opportunity to go win a game. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, by the way, when you have a player of that caliber who wants the football in big spots. In fact, it's like a basketball player wants the shot at the end. Some guys shy away from that. I was
just going to say that. The comparison I'll give you is Jimmy Butler in the Sixer year. I mean, he didn't care about the numbers. He didn't care what happened for the first 3 quarters. Ben Simmons could get his when teams weren't packing the defense and forcing him to play half-court offense, which he couldn't. And it wasn't when Joel Embiid was scoring when the defense wasn't quite as tight. But come fourth quarter, if the game was close, the ball comes over here, and I'll deliver. And that's a huge reason why they were as successful as they were. It honestly is the reason they got 7 games against the Raptors. And I just feel like AJ is very similar. It is not so much about how much, it's when.
Rob, I do want to ask you about the defense because we've been talking about the offense since you joined us. And the offense, while it needs tinkering and there is questions to be asked, compare the offense to the defense. And we know the bigger problem is the defense. 4 touchdowns by the Arizona Cardinals in the second half, right down the field. No answer whatsoever. It was all Sean Desai's fault. Then it wasn't because Matt Patricia took over. And Matt Patricia's defense has allowed the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals just to march down the field and get the game-winning touchdown with under 2 minutes to go. So I don't know that it's Matt Patricia's fault any more than it's Sean Desai's fault. They're both to blame. When do we look at the players on this defense and go, the organization, a.k.a. Howie Roseman, just didn't give enough bullets for the gun? This defense doesn't have enough talent. No, they've had some injuries, and you have to factor that in when you're evaluating it. But even with this defense isn't good enough. The players that are here that are supposed to be really good haven't been this year. Is the defensive issues, and they're major, more on the players than the coaching in your mind?
Well, it's the players for me, and I think it's proven because you've had two different coordinators or play callers, and the results have been the same. Having said that, it's funny you guys were talking about the Michigan game last night. I got a lot of Jesse Minter talk on my timeline.
Oh yeah, Jesse
there was
Minter,
a ton of Jesse's running the defense that the NFL loves and all that kind of stuff. But look, if we're gonna lay it
by
out,
the way, he interviewed for the job at the Eagles DC.
He did. He may be interviewing again. He might be back. But look, if we're laying it out and saying who's the most disappointing collection of folks, to me, it's a defensive line. I mean, they got pushed around. They were out of their spots. They were manhandled on Sunday by a 3-win Arizona team at home. And look, we can all talk about the linebackers and how they're not making plays and the secondary has holes in it. And all of that is accurate and fair. But those position groups don't have the amount of resources the D-line does in terms of finance, in terms of draft capital. It just doesn't. And to see them come up as small as they did on Sunday and have no answer, even on that last drive. Okay, we just went through every aspect of the Eagles drive, but they do kick a field goal. If you just bow up in that spot and say they're not going to run the ball and we are going to force that wide receiving core to get down the field and score 7, I think it's a different game, and they weren't capable. I mean, even in a spot where you knew it was coming, they couldn't stop it. And to me, that's the biggest disappointment. And, we talk about it a lot. Fletcher Cox for most of the year of the collection, I think, has been the best. And that's not great. He was supposed to be, at this point, not BG level rotational player, but a rotational guy, a guy that, man, if you could bring him off the bench with all of his smarts and natural ability in smaller spaces, think about what kind of productivity you would get from him. That's just not happening right now. He's playing a lot, and it's showing in my mind.
R. Kuestner, NBC 10. Make sure you follow Rob on X, formerly known as Twitter. Does a tremendous job. NBCPhiladelphia.com. Special projects producer. Does all the good stuff you see over at NBC 10 when it comes not just to the Eagles, but other sports as well. Rob, I know you got to go for daddy duty.
We're back in school over here in Jersey, John. You know what I mean? We're back.
I know how it goes. Real quick, coaching versus personnel. You kind of alluded to it there. Defensively, it's obviously the personnel more than the coaching. No, I'm not trying to defend Sean Desai, Matt Patricia, but you can roll anybody in here. Jesse Minter, Rob Kuestner, Jody Mack. This ain't going to be a great defense. Offensively, Brian Johnson's getting a lot of heat. Is that? Do you think that should be, or do you think that should be more Nick Sirianni?
Yeah, I would think I think the coaching should get more on the offensive side than the players, because I do think the players have, as we pointed out earlier in the year, I mean, they are in the playoffs because they won 11 games. But if you were to measure them and say, okay, of the 11, do I view this as a coaching win, or do I view this as a talent win? And they won it largely due to the talent assembled. I just think if it's a scale, much more of them go to the talent. Honestly, if I was really being fair about it, the game that I can pinpoint where I say that was really a well-coached, really well thought out plan, both on offense and defense, is Miami. Outside of that, I can't give you one where I was like, wow, that really kind of, knocked
Tampa was pretty good.
Tampa was good. That's right. And especially on defense, to be fair, against Tampa. And they may need to dip back into that because they might be seeing Tampa again here. But, we're talking about it. So that's what, 9-2? And I know there's probably some things, but, to me, it's been an underwhelming performance on that side of the ball as it relates to the coaching. I would agree with you. I think on defense, it's personnel. On offense, to me, if we're questioning what's not quite clicking, it's more to me about the coaching than it is the players.
Rob, great stuff. We appreciate you jumping in with us, giving a couple of minutes.
You guys got it.
Get the kids off the bed.
Off the bed, they wish. They got to go to school.
Yeah.
I meant
school. That's right.
No, Put him back to bed. Don't sweat it.
Yeah.
Get on with the rest of it. Rob, good stuff. Thanks much
Thanks,
for
Rob.
hopping up.
All right. See you.
Our pleasure. From NBC 10, Rob Kuestner here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac, when we come back, you know I'm a Jalen Hurts fan. You and I are both big Jalen Hurts fans, and I go back to the night that the Eagles selected Jalen Hurts. I was one of the few, the proud, that actually said, hey, I really like that pick for the Eagles. Most people were, what the F is Howie Roseman doing taking a backup quarterback? So I've been on the Jalen side from minute one when he became a Philadelphia Eagle. I think we got a Jalen problem. I do. And I know that the defense is the bigger problem on this team overall, but this season's going to be what it's going to be. You beat the Giants, lose the Giants, win their first playoff game, lose their first playoff game. They get back to the Super Bowl. It'll be one of the greatest turnarounds in the history of football, not banking on it. But then there's going to be 2024 and 25 and 26. I got a Jalen issue I got to bring up. We'll do that when we come back. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. Mac and Mac here on Birds 365.